And good afternoon. Thank you for streaming with us here on CBS News Chicago. Breaking news out of Lake County this afternoon. Within the past half hour, a grand jury has indicted the Highland Park mass shooter on 117 different counts. 117 different counts for the Highland Park shooter, Robert Crimo III, who of course shot and killed 7 people. Injured 25 others, wounded initially. A total of 46 were injured on that July 4th shooting, that Independence Day parade just a few weeks ago that about 15 minutes in turned into chaos. We are joined now by our legal analyst, Irv Miller. Irv, this is hot off the presses. There's not a whole lot, frankly, more we're going to learn about this because this was a grand jury process, so it's rather clandestine, rather secretive. 117 counts. Does the number surprise you?
Oh, that's exactly what I was expecting. He was charged initially with just the murder counts at the time of the arrest, and as I predicted on your ear, there would be dozens more counts to deal with the attempted murder and the aggravated discharge of a firearm that occurred that day. So I'm not surprised about the number at all.
Okay, one thing here, Irv, we have, of course, 7 decedents, 7 people died, 7 people were indeed murdered on July 4th. There are 21 counts of first-degree murder in the charging documentation, in the indictments. So that's 3 counts of first-degree murder for each deceased victim. Legally, can you explain to me how that works?
The Illinois murder statute is divided up into 3 parts, and you could be charged on 1, 2, or 3, or all of them. The first one is the murder charge that encompasses that you intended to kill the person, and obviously the person died. The second part of the murder statute is that you did an act that you knew would create death or a substantial bodily harm. That's a second one. And the third one is you committed a murder during the course of committing a felony. So the state's attorney's office is basically saying they're under 3 theories of murder under the Illinois statute, that he should be convicted of murder either on 1 or all 3 of those particular parts of our statute.
So in a typical proceeding, or in many proceedings, not typical proceeding, but sometimes we get something called a proffer, which kind of explains things. I mean, if you have a federal indictment, you get kind of an outline of what happens. In this proceeding, a grand jury proceeding, we don't get that. So we don't get details. We don't get a rundown or an explanation, or, you know, that's why we're turning to you. Why does that happen? Why is that important in the grand jury system? And basically walk me through, so what happened here?
Well, when you talk about a proffer, what you typically see, typically out of 26 in California, it's at a bond hearing. And that's when the assistant state's attorney is telling the judge everything about the case so the judge can make an intelligent decision about what the bond should be. In this particular case, we're past the bond hearing. We're at an indictment stage, and the grand jury works in secret. Grand jury consists of up to 16 citizens, 12 must be there for a quorum, and it takes 9 grand jurors to vote for the indictment. The vote is in secret, the proceeding is in secret, and you only find out if they decide to indict somebody or not indict somebody after the case is taken out of the grand jury's hands and goes into the circuit court system if there's a charge. So in this particular case, all that comes out of the grand jury is not a narrative about what occurred. It's just a charging document, in this case 117 counts. And frankly, when you look at these counts, you could basically on your own determine, hey, I know what happened. These charges in and of themselves tell you that murder was committed, that people were shot at, and this person intended to kill them, and he discharged a weapon in doing it. So basically, we know from the charge here today, the indictment today, exactly what happened. And since this case was so highly publicized when it happened, I don't think there's any loose ends out there that we don't know about.
Yeah, I'm sorry I was wrong on the nomenclature there, but thank you for clearing that up, Irv. It also says here from the press release, the defendant is additionally charged with 48 counts of attempted murder. Again, 48 counts of attempted murder, aggravated battery with a firearm for each victim who was either struck by a bullet fragment, or shrapnel. Again, 7 people died that day. There's a discussion sometimes about people who were wounded. We know at least 24 were indeed wounded, but 46 likely injured in a couple dozen more in kind of the chaos that ensued after that. The raw number of counts, I mean, it seems like a lot. Of course, this was a mass shooting, but each has to be, proven beyond a reasonable doubt. But you're not surprised by that number, 117 counts.
No, because you have a number of people who are deceased, and as I said earlier, the Illinois statute allows for 3 different theories of murder that could be applied to each one of them. You have counts of attempted murder for everyone who was shot, and the Lake County State's Attorney decided, hey, listen, just in case the jury doesn't think there was an intent to kill, he's also charged aggravated battery with a firearm, which doesn't require intent to kill. It just requires that you shot somebody and that person suffered great bodily harm. So between the murder counts, the attempt murder counts, and the aggravated battery counts, with considering the number of victims, I think this number of counts is totally appropriate.
Okay, Irv, thank you. If we want to go to some video, we're going to hold on to you, Irv. I just want to read a statement from the state's attorney there, the man, the head law enforcement enforcer from Lake County. He said, quote, "I want to thank law enforcement and the prosecutors who presented evidence to the grand jury today. Our investigation continues. Our victim specialists are working around the clock to support all those affected by this crime that led to the 117 felony counts being filed today." That again from the state's attorney in Lake County, Eric Reinhardt. It is also noted that the accused, Robert Crimo, is going to appear in court in person next Wednesday, August 3rd, 11 a.m. for his arraignment. What will we learn? Will we learn anything August 3rd at that arraignment, Irv?
You're going to learn that he's going to plead not guilty to each and every count. You're going to see the case get assigned to a judge. The judge who will be assigned is Judge Rossetti up in Lake County. And you're going to hear a schedule that the judge will set for the prosecution to begin turning over police reports and forensic reports and whatever documents the state's attorney's office has. The judge will set a date certain for the prosecution to turn over all these items to the defense attorney so the defendant can start preparing a defense if he chooses to do so.
Now, another question for you is, of course, there no doubt will be a high level of public interest in this. Of course, we're looking at some file footage now. File footage from that July 4th mass shooting that left 7 dead, 25 wounded, total number of injured 46. The shooter in said incident indicted on 117 counts. That indictment coming down today from a grand jury that, as per, met in secret in Lake County and has handed down this indictment. We've been discussing with our legal expert, Irv Miller, for the past few minutes. Of course, that indictment coming down at the bottom of the 2 o'clock hour. Irv, there's going to be a high level of interest in this case, of course. That's to be expected. And one thing we've seen an easing of the rules when it comes to allowing video cameras in courtrooms. No question that request will be put in here. It's been tested. It really is judge's discretion, isn't it? And how do you see that request? How do you see that playing out in this case?
That request was already put in at the bond hearing, and for purposes of the bond hearing, that judge granted the request for extended media coverage. Now it goes to felony courtroom. Judge Rossetti will be presiding, and she will make the ultimate determination whether or not she will allow extended media coverage, cameras in the courtroom in this case. And I would be absolutely shocked if that motion wasn't allowed. This is a case that calls out for that. I think the community has a right to see what goes on in the courtroom. When you use the word transparency, this is the poster child of what transparency should look like in a courtroom. So I would highly anticipate that this, not only its trial, but every interim proceeding, every status date will be extended media coverage will be allowed in this particular case.
Okay, interesting take. Irv Miller, we appreciate that. So you think we will see cameras in the courtroom for this case? Is it completely judge's discretion, or does the judge need to have a reason to turn it down, or how exactly does that work? Kind of get into the weeds with me a little bit.
Well, it's totally the judge's discretion, and frankly, the judge should come up with any excuse that they want, either for or against their decision. If it's requested, this will not be the first time that there's been cameras in the courtroom up in Lake County. There was another case about a year ago that there was extended media coverage granted, so there is precedent for it. And frankly, as you know, Brett, it's becoming common. It's not something that's unusual anymore. We expect it to happen because we've seen it so many times. Here in Cook County, the Van Dyke case, up in Wisconsin, we had the Rittenhouse case. So it's something we're used to seeing, and I think the public would be pretty upset if we didn't see it this time.
Yeah, and the Jussie Smollett case as well. And obviously not anything new. In some cases, some states have seen it for decades, just more of a novelty here. Become accustomed to, for decades, seeing, sketch artists. So we will see indeed how that plays out, but let's get to the headline. The Highland Park mass shooter, the parade shooter, indicted on 117 counts. 7 people died, 25 wounded, 46 overall injured, 21 counts of first-degree murder. Irv, you explained how exactly that will take place, kind of the 3-prong approach for 3 charges of first-degree murder for each victim. Any other takeaways for us here before we let you go on this Wednesday afternoon?
The only other take I have is whether or not there will be any other attorneys stepping in to represent him. As you know, there was kind of a mix-up at the bond hearing as to whether or not there'd be a private attorney coming in or whether or not the public defender's office was going to represent. This is one of these cases that private attorneys, when somebody comes to you and asks, hey, I'd like you to represent my son, I'd like you to represent me. This is a tough call for a private attorney as to whether or not this is the type of case that an attorney would want to take. It really calls into question what we have to think about in our own values as attorneys as to what type of case we want to get involved in. So I'd be curious to see if a private attorney steps into this case or the public defender continues to represent him.
Yeah, that will be interesting to watch indeed, and that's something you expect we will probably find out a week from today.
If not before. Frankly, a private attorney can file an appearance asking to be allowed in the case at any time, but it has to be with the judge's approval, and it has to be what we call a substitution of the attorney asking the public defender asking leave to withdraw, and the private attorney asking leave or permission to come on the case. But I would be surprised if a private attorney steps into this case, I have to tell you.
It's interesting, and I want to hold on to you because you bring up a really interesting point, and a dramatic juxtaposition from, let's say, the Rittenhouse case, where there were literally private attorneys kind of fawning at it because it was a cause case. It was Second Amendment. It was along a political fault line. But this one, you, Irv Miller, say when you have a mass shooter at a parade now charged with 117 felonies, a private attorney, no matter what you believe in, obviously believe in the Constitution, you take your oaths to the law to the nth degree, but you could see private attorneys simply saying, I'm not going to touch this.
You know, I think if somebody, if a family showed up with a suitcase full of money and said, will you take the case, I don't know any private attorneys that would take the case. Each of us make our own decisions as to what type of case we will or will not take as a criminal defense attorney. As you know, Brett, I was a prosecutor for 10 years. So I actually became desensitized to some criminal cases. But then you get on the other side as the defense attorney, and you have to decide, listen, do I want to represent this person? You know, I have my standards. I have a problem representing people that abuse children. Mass murders in this particular case, I mean, this type of shooting, you know, and again, he is presumed innocent, and I believe in the system. I believe you're innocent until you're proven guilty. But, you know, you can't just, you know, put a blindfold on and not realize what type of case you're getting into.
An interesting nuance we will monitor. Irv Miller, we appreciate your insight this afternoon and always. And of course, we will see much more of you as this case progresses. If you heard that alarm behind me, it's nothing to be worried about. It's a marine warning, weather. Thank you for joining us for this special report on CBS News Chicago. Again, the Highland Park mass shooter who killed 7, wounded 25, injured 46 on July 4th at that parade, now faces 117 felony counts. The grand jury returned that this afternoon. He will be in court again 1 week from today, and we will be there for it and every step of the way. Thank you for streaming with us here on CBS News Chicago this afternoon.